Hi, I'm Fran Stoddard. Tonight we connect with John Killacky. You may be familiar with Killacky as the executive director of the Flynn Center, but he is so much more. He came to Burlington following a notable career as a leading arts administrator at centers in San Francisco and Minneapolis, and 2 dance companies. He has also acted as program officer at the San Francisco Foundation and the Pew Charitable Trust. Got that out. Killacky is also a writer, lecturer, and filmmaker, recognized for his contribution to the arts with numerous awards, including the first annual Margaret L. Canistine Award for Arts Advocacy being bestowed this fall. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. It's a big thrill to be honored that way.
Yeah, well, very, very well deserved. So it's pretty cool to announce it here. So your passion for the performing arts and your advocacy actually goes back a long way. So how did a kid from South Chicago decide to pursue a career in dance?
Well, you know, I went with my school to a student matinee of the Alvin Ailey Dance Company, and I'd never seen dance before. And what was on that stage was so magical. I went home that night and I said, I want to be a modern dancer. And my father, who sold cattle at the Chicago Stockyards, was like, okay, what does that mean? And I said, I don't know, but I saw it today and I want to be that. And to my parents' credit, that Saturday they took me downtown Chicago and looked up on the yellow pages modern dance, and I started taking dance classes.
Wow.
And so, you know, to me, one of my favorite parts at the Flynn is when those student matinees happen, those buses come, because that is me walking off those buses into a theater and having my life transformed.
Absolutely. So here you not only pursued it, you went to New York City and you indeed performed with professional companies, but you shifted to performing arts administration. Was that a painful decision, or what was that switch for you? Because then you started, you headed up 2 dance companies.
Right.
Following that.
You know, I was, in hindsight, very good in Chicago. And then I was invited by the Harkness Ballet to spend the summer in their program, and I was okay in New York. It was like at the Olympic level.
New York.
It was, but I had a lovely career. I performed in contemporary dancers in Winnipeg. I came back in Theater of the Open Eye, and luckily postmodernism was happening. And I started as a ballet dancer, but I actually had a fuller career and not so much technique driven, because I actually probably wasn't that strong to be a soloist in a ballet company. But after about 10 years, I thought, I think there's other ways for me to contribute, and I loved particular choreographers' works, and I thought I can actually help them make their work happen in the world, and it became more satisfying for me.
So it was satisfying.
Oh,
you took to it.
Tremendously. Tricia Brown Dance Company I ran for 3 years, and I started on their kitchen table. On Tricia's kitchen table, I was the only staff member, and I had to do booking the tours, and I had to like figure out the finance. I didn't even know how to balance my checkbook at that point, but it's like suddenly I have to do this. And it was a magical time because she's working on a piece with Bob Rauschenberg and Laurie Anderson. And at that moment, it was called Set and Reset. I think in hindsight, it's one of the seminal works in dance, and it catapulted her onto the European stage. And so off I went with a backpack and press kits and went knocking on opera houses' doors. I would take the train to a different town every day for 6 weeks, and that's how we broke into Europe. So it was a very different time, but it was magical because everything I was doing was new. I didn't know how to do any of it.
And successfully so, which is pretty cool.
Yes. Yes.
So, and another thing you did, you weren't about to allow your very highly trained body and disciplined mind go to waste in any way. You became a marathon runner. What did that do for you?
I was really, I missed the discipline of daily class. I missed that kind of trying to get better and improving things that you were already good at, trying to fix those, and changing things that you weren't good at, trying to figure that out. And it was a running boom in New York, and there I was.
And look at those legs. Oh, God, gorgeous.
Look at that belly I don't have anymore, okay?
Sorry, John. Fabulous. So, but then running major performing arts organizations, the Walker Center in Minneapolis, the Yerba
Yerba
Buena
Center for the Arts.
Center for the Arts in San Francisco. Actually, well, I guess this was in the 80s. Caught the attention of Rush Limbaugh.
Well, I was at the Walker Art Center from '88 to '96, and we were presenting contemporary artists. And so, if you think back on the culture wars of the '90s, my job was to present the contemporary artists, the provocateurs of the day. And yes, there were a number of artists: Karen Finley, Ron Athey, Bill T. Jones. Many of these artists caught the National Endowment for the Arts attention, and people like Senator Helms and Rush Limbaugh were very much about getting defunding for the National Endowment for the Arts, and so they would take instances of things and exploit them terribly. And we presented Ron Athey, who did some piercing on stage, and I remember my mother called me and she said, "Oh my God, what did you do?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Rush Limbaugh was yelling about you for a half hour last night." I said, "Mom, he lies. He's a clown." She said, "But it was on television." I said, "Now who are you going to believe? Your son, or are you going to believe Rush Limbaugh?" Right? So it was an interesting time to live through those culture wars, because the whole arts funding system was under attack, and I was part of it, and the artists were demonized, and many of them never got their careers back. Very, very sad time.
Did it shift the way you made your programming decisions? I mean, you're looking for, I would imagine, what is the zeitgeist of our time? Who is our audience? How you choose those things, which you're involved in certainly, and now again. Did you back off? Did you push?
No, I was very lucky to have the support of the Walker Art Center, because it had a long history, both in its galleries as well as its performance for presenting, like the Living Theater was there in the '60s, running around nude. So it was more about how to manage the expectations and frame the work that was important, but I was not encouraged at all to lessen what we were doing. And what was important is, at any moment, if you look at contemporary arts, it's about that moment in time, and that moment in time is the AIDS pandemic. People were dying, and many of these artists' friends were either dead already, or many of them were dying, and they were really making very visceral work that was very painful and somewhat ugly. And I think one thing I learned is that sort of in the culture wars, the moral right really were very clear about their agenda, and the art world wasn't. Because suddenly, if someone didn't like something an artist was doing, they didn't want to support it. So it was a fascinating issue of, like is in your home. You get art you like. And even when you come to the Flynn, friend, if you like everything we present, I failed.
So is programming different now than it was?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I was thinking of after 8 years at the Walker is like, well, maybe my time is done here. I brought my aesthetic forward, and that what I was seeing was that beauty was coming back in. And this next generation that had watched and lived through this carnage and this AIDS pandemic and this war, they wanted to embrace lyricism and beauty. And it was not something I was deeply rooted in, oddly enough. And so it was like, okay, well, let's figure this out. And I look now, and it's another era, and you look at that politicized work, and it's not being done today. It should be. I think with a lot, I think we're going to see it in social justice issues, that we're going to see an eruption now of work about inequities, economic inequities, racial inequities. I think that's going to be the next frontier.
Great. So, way jumping ahead, but still 20 years ago now, a tumor on your spine was discovered. You had an operation on it that went terribly wrong.
Yeah, terribly wrong. They found a tumor inside my spinal cord, way up at C2, way up here, and because it was in the cord, they couldn't do a biopsy. So it was so they said, well, it was blocking 60% of the cord. And it was unclear if it was a slow-growing tumor or a quickly growing tumor, because we had just discovered it. And they said, well, the surgeon said, you'll probably be in the hospital 3 or 4 days with a sore neck for a month. Anyway, that's what I heard. My husband, who was with me, said, so what would be the worst case? And he said, worst case. I guess he'd be paralyzed at the Sister Kennedy Institute, which was the rehab hospital. And that's indeed what happened. The night before surgery, I ran 5 miles because I wanted to get my last run in before surgery. And 24 hours later, I woke up literally paralyzed from the neck down in a hospital. And it was an astounding moment to be stuck in your body. I couldn't move anything, not a finger, nothing.
So what steps do you take to survive that kind of devastating blow to somebody, an athlete, dancer? How do you begin? Because now you walk, you are a miracle.
Well, I'm very lucky, and I would say that the 3 things that were important. I was deeply loved by my husband, Larry Connolly, who actually I would not be here today. I would not be alive without him sleeping on that floor around the clock in the hospital. The second thing is, marathon training really taught me that, it's a long-term commitment. And if you worry how you feel at the 9-mile mark, it's only going to get worse at the 17-mile mark. And you got to the 26-mile mark. So you always look at the horizon. You're always looking like, okay, that's where I got to get to. That helped. And oddly enough, dancing helped. Because what happened was, it's called Brown-Séquard syndrome, and I don't have sensation in the right side of my body, and I have no location, which is proprioception, in the left side of my body. So many people that have this have either been shot or stabbed in the spine, and they never learn to walk again because it's too confusing. But eventually, something came back, and it was this finger. I remember lying in bed and realizing I could twitch the finger, and that was huge. Wow. And so Larry came in that morning. I said, okay, I got something to show you. He said, where do I look? Because he knew it was going to be small. And so I waved at him, and it was like, but once that moved, I thought, okay, that's the first step on the marathon. Now I just got to figure out, and it took a couple months to do. But ultimately, when I was able to push up and sit in a wheelchair, I said, bring the mirror over. I think I'm going to learn to stand up visually. And they were like, why? And I said, well, nothing else is working, but as a dancer, I learned to dance in the mirror, to make things that I didn't know how they quite felt. I could actually learn that way. So I said, so I actually still to this day walk visually. So when I'm walking with you, I always have to watch where my feet are, because I don't have any relation to the ground in my feet. So you'll see me at the Flynn or walking around the barn, you'll see me with my cane, because that's what anchors me into the ground.
Well, it's remarkable that you are moving as you do. And actually, we did visit Windswept Farm, yes. Your second love besides Larry, I would venture to say, a very special pony that does help with your healing. So, Raindrop, what a sweetie.
She's incredible. It's you can't be grand around a stable when you're mucking out stalls and you're chopping up ice. And also, for me, what's great about it is I'm not an expert there. I have no gravitas. The teenagers know more than I do. And the best thing for me is I show up, and there's no past, there's no future, there's just now. Yeah. The pony says, what about me now?
And she's letting you fly.
Letting me fly. Yeah. I don't need my legs. And so I get to dance again in the world. I get to fly around. I'm never happier than when I'm in that cart.
And I recommend our web extra, because we talk more about Raindrop and how remarkable she's been in your recovery and in your life, and you get to see more of Raindrop, so thank you for that.
And you were brave. You just jumped right in the cart. It was like, okay, let's go for a ride.
Like, okay, I think I hold on here. It was big. It was like, you're taller. It wasn't made for a shorter woman. But anyway.
You hung on really well.
It was great. Loved it. So probably a lot of people don't know that you're also a filmmaker. You have done 5 shorts, you've done a special on Janice Ian, you produced with your husband. What is it about film that became the right kind of creative expression for you? We're going to show a clip from a film, but why film?
Well, it was in the 90s that I started, and it was my way of also trying to come to coming to terms with the grief around loss from AIDS. So many of my friends, my era, my generation in the 70s when I was living in New York, most of those men were dead. Most of the gay men I know had died. And so for me, as well as artists making this work, it was like, how do I memorialize these losses, but how do I survive? And how do I find hope? So I started making short AIDS films, and it was really beautiful to work with colleagues in a collaborative way. I love film because I can't make it by myself. I write the narratives, and I work with the camera people, then I work with editors. And also, you know, in editing, you got to give up the storyboard, because you got what you got in the can,
Right.
no matter what.
True enough.
And if I have 18 people in the film laying there, and we're done, if we don't have it, we don't have it. You know, so I loved crafting films, and I felt it was a fun way for me to find my own way in the world. What was odd is I separated my life. I had an identity as an artist, and then I had it at the Walker Art Center. And one time I was at the Harvard Film Archives, and someone said, "Do you ever get confused with that guy that works at the Walker with the same name?"
All the time.
Well, and I said, "Well, no, I don't." And then I told him afterwards. But after that, I thought, that's kind of silly. I can still be an arts administrator and an artist. And so I think I've tried from that moment on to do that. So first, the films were around AIDS, because that was what I was living with. And then, you know, certainly around disability, when suddenly I had this new body and this new relationship. I felt it was a good way to do that. And I think that's part of Dreaming Awake.
Right, so set that up for us. We just took a clip from Dreaming Awake we're about to see. Do you want us?
Well, to me, it's like a prayer of reconciliation for me to finally accept this body. Because even though this happened 20 years ago, Fran, I still dream as a marathoner.
Sure, of course you do.
I still dream fully able. So my psyche still has not accepted this. So the film really, to me, was that. It was trying to reconcile.
Great. Let's take a look at a clip from Dreaming Awake.
After surgery, I died then, but you refused and brought me back. 7 years and counting, of tilting toward the ground. I'm afraid if I sit down, I will never get up again. The dancer in me learned to stand visually. The marathoner took the second step. Rehab gave me strength and range of motion, but with each new modality, I interrupt expectations. Improvements are not cures. If I sit down, I will never get up again. Still imagining a body I cannot have, I startled myself, glimpsing fatigue in passing windows. My bifurcated body torques with every stride. Neuropathy and weariness debilitates. Therapists caution about wear and tear, while friends cheer, "You're getting better." If I sit down, I will never get up again.
It's beautiful, so vulnerable, so lovely, and you're one of the dancers.
Yes, I'm in the wheelchair, and also it was working with a group from the Access Dance Company, which is a mixed ability company out of California. And what was really beautiful is they allowed me into their process, and I gave them the voiceover, and I said, "I don't know how I'm going to incorporate this yet, but can I just film you all?" And people were nude, and people were very open to that, because they all had bodies with disabilities. And often, you know, the world defines a disability by the apparatus, the wheelchair or the cane or the prosthetic. And so, in a way, these dancers were very free about, well, let's just be with our bodies.
Yeah.
And it helped me
beautiful.
accept my own body, too.
Another most recent film is on Janis Ian.
Yes.
Which you produced with your husband. We're just going to, probably some people have seen it on PBS, show a little bit of that. How did that all come about?
Well, I really was a fan of Janis Ian since 1967, when she had that song Society's Child, about interracial dating, which was quite an amazing song of its day. She was 14 years old when that happened. I then followed her through her career. I eventually became friends with her, and she is someone who has always been about social justice. Beautiful songwriter. Her songs have always spoken to me in the different parts of my life. I appreciate her as an artist in the world. She's also a writer, and she's an activist. She and her wife, Pat, got married in Toronto a long time ago, before it was even legal here, which is amazing. She's someone that I really admire. And
she had a tough time early on.
She had a very tough time. She, her bookkeeper disappeared, and the IRS told her she owed $1 million of unpaid taxes, and they took every single dollar out of her bank account.
And people had issues with her social justice message.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we should move on to programming for the
Okay,
friends.
yes,
If I don't
yes.
get to it, yes. I'm in deep trouble. So we have, you know, you have what's coming up this season, which is lots of variety. We'll take a look at that and talk about the season and what you've put together
Well,
for
here's
this year.
the fun for me at the Flynn is that we serve a lot of different communities. I mean, we have Dwight Yoakam, we have Arlo Guthrie, you know, we have this incredible fado singer, Ana Mora.
Oh, I love her.
Oh, she's fantastic. That voice of hers is really beautiful. And then another favorite of mine when I was growing up was Laura Nero. Remember Stone Soul Picnic and When I Die, all those songs? Well, Billy Childs, the jazz pianist, has done reimagining Laura Nero. And so there's going to be all of those songs set in a jazz context. It's going to be great. You're a taiko player. We have the Yamato group from Japan,
That's
which
very
I
exciting.
love.
Can't wait.
The Peking Acrobats are coming back. Paula Poundstone, her third visit to the Flynn, so we have a little bit of comedy. Improvised Shakespeare. Those guys are completely nuts. They ask the audience for a name of a show, and then they put that whole show together on the spot, and they wind up with the name. And of course, the audience has come up with the rudest, silliest names. It's fun. Dance is, of course, my sweet spot. We have Dorrance Dance, which is a tap company. We have a hip-hop company from Rio de Janeiro. We have Eiko from Eiko and Coma, the Buto company, couple. Eiko's doing a solo program.
They were here a number of years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
She also is doing an interesting exhibition we're doing in the gallery where she went back to Fukushima, as they're now opening some of that up, and she got her body photographed in these different sites, and it's really trying to make these sites sacred with her body. It's very moving to see that. So we're glad she's here. And then the ballet person me is very happy. Alonzo King Lines Ballet from San Francisco is coming, and those dancers are so sensual, and they got so much technique.
So,
All
get
right,
the program.
that's it.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, okay.
Moving on. So, your view of Flynn's purpose and place in community, because you really, arts in the community, which is one reason why you have this Arts Advocacy Award, I think. Where is its place? What are the arts and the Flynn? How does it sit in the community?
Well, I think my whole premise is that it's better together. And it's a kind of a trite thing, but you know, as I work with Burlington City Arts, it's like we were both celebrating our 30th anniversary a couple of years. So I said, let's do something together and raise money together.
Yeah,
Like,
well, you're in a competitive
but
arena,
but it's easy to do.
collaboration is.
And then Lyric, we were bringing Kelly O'Hara, and I said to Sydney, so let's do that together, you know. And it always works out when you do it that way. Catamount Arts up in St. Johnsbury wanted to rent our space for Nico Case to do benefit for Catamount Arts. And I said, we can do that, but why don't we just do it all together? And
does that make some people nervous? I mean,
well, people say, well, and, you know, Jody's great. He said, well, I'm not sure I can get corporate underwriting. I said, well, I think I can get that. And you've got Nico Case, okay? I mean, you've got the beautiful talent here, and you know, and it's not competition, because if you overlay all of the generosity to all these arts organizations, these social and human service agencies, it's pretty much the same people are giving. So, you know, and if someone gives to one group and not to me one year, that's okay. I still thank them for what they're doing for Burlington City Arts, and it does come around, you know. So it's a way I actually believe in working, and a way I've tried to work my entire career, because I've just seen how it works.
It's refreshing, and it does seem to work. So
Here's
thank
the
you.
first lesson. Remember when I told you I took the backpack and went to Europe and knocked on doors? Merce Cunningham's company gave me that list to go knock on those doors. So Tricia Brown would not have her career in Europe unless we had the generosity of Merce Cunningham. So I've been paying back ever since then, that we're all in this together.
And you've done some pretty creative fundraising. There is rappelling coming up, right?
Over
right
the
around-
edge. Over the
over
edge.
the edge. And you dedicated urinals. Now that was a pretty interesting one. So fundraising. Is it hard? Is it fun? Is it about being as creative as possible?
Well, first of all, it's my job. And our budget at the Flynn is $6.6 million, and about 64% of that is earned, which is our ticket sales and our class sales. But that means 36% of $6.6 million I have to raise every single year. So every day I ask people for money. But what I try to do is take my work seriously, but not myself seriously. And the generosity of keeping the Flynn is, it's been very moving to me. When I first got here, we were going to look at renovations, and I was talking to some donors and he said, what are you worried about? And I said, what if I fail? And I'm the new guy in town, right? And he said, well, John, relax. This community will not let the Flynn fail. You might not work out, buddy, I don't know. But we're not going to let the Flynn fail because of its iconic and central stature, really.
Sure.
But I have to earn that every day. So I have to make sure the Flynn is giving back and we're part of the community, we're not separate, and that it's an integrated thing. So every year I'm really trying to figure out how have we earned our support, you know? And so when I go and ask for support, it's not asking for me. It's actually asking for those kids to come to the schools or the scholarships. It's more about asking for what we embody.
Sure. We're almost out of time, but I just, the ADA, the American Disabilities Act, is just 15 years old. It's helped, you know, we've made great strides, but it's backfired in some ways. How are we doing? Are we progressing? It's another topic I would think dear to your heart.
Well, it's very dear to my heart, both because of my own perspectives, but also to allow people to come in. It's important to me. I would say here's our failure. I think the arts community has addressed accessibility through architectural accommodation and not through programmatic accommodation. And so we've been learning a lot at the Flynn. And for instance, we just did something about making some of our performances autism friendly. And that was so scary for me and the staff because we didn't know anything about it. And it's like, how do we
learned a lot, and I'm sorry, we're already out of time. John, I'm so sorry, but I had to ask you, so we will be more sensitive and read more of your work. Thank you so much for joining me today. Vermont PBS would like to connect with you, and keep this conversation going. You can always reach out with feedback and ideas at connect@vermontpbs.org. You can also check out other episodes and extra material at also on our website. See you next time. Thanks.